Hi, I'm Sarah Gabrielle Barron, and I'm coming to you from Ndomine Manitoulin Island on Anishinaabeg First Nation territory. I'm going to be sharing a video on how I think the Green Party of Canada functions and operates, and this graphic is inspired by Sociocracy 3.0 methodology, which is a new way of envisioning how we can conceive of how organizations like the Green Party of Canada operate. Okay, so the Green Party of Canada has not really been great at understanding basic separation of powers, which is a concept that in a functioning democratic institution, you need to have three separate branches and they need to be separate. You can't have individuals crossing those lines between those three different branches. You need to have the executive branch, which is like the day-to-day functioning of the party. You need to have the judicial branch, which handles ethical issues or breaches of ethics, and then the legislative branch, which is like the political wing. And so in the graphic I'm about to show you, if you see bold colors, it means that it's an official part of the party, and anything that's in light color means that it's not an official part of the party, but it still exists and it still counts. And so we have some red arrows that to me indicate areas of concern due to hierarchical control, which is antithema to green political philosophy. And then we have a lot of little red lines that for me just indicate that there are areas of concern, that there's tension around understanding who is doing what and how those flows and those conversations happen. So hopefully over time, all the little red lines will go away entirely and everybody will understand what's going on. Okay, so we're going to start with the green because that's the political aspect of the party that everybody is most familiar with. It's the face of the party. And we have a leader and her personal staff. Oh, I need to change that. Phil Spiegel is no longer Annamie Paul's chief of staff. And then we have our MPs. And I need to change that. Jenica Atwin is no longer one of our MPs, sadly. And so everybody knows what's going on there. That part's obvious. We have in our Constitution 7.3.11, 12, and 13 the description that in the Green Party of Canada, policy is set by the membership. And we used to have a member policy conference and process, policy development process, and it used to happen every 2 years, every other year. And we skipped 2020, unfortunately, mostly due to COVID. And there was also a lot going on in the party, but unfortunately we did skip it. And we're having one in August 21st weekend, which is amazing. There is a lot of, oh yeah, we also don't have a shadow cabinet. There is a lot of confusion about how our member generated policy book is used by our legislative wing, our politicians, to create their positions, like their media positions and the election platform. And there's a lot of criticism going on about how that happens. And that's something that really interests me as a green fundamentalist. So the process by which the members create policy together is in question. And right now there's a committee called the Policy Development and Process Committee, and they're a great group of Greens. They probably should have gotten started last spring in 2020, but there were some issues in how that committee was being put together. And so they started, I think, sometime after Christmas. And the reason why there's a red arrow there is that they are making decisions about our process, about how members generate policy, and they aren't really inviting input from members so much. There is a bit of input coming from different groups, but not enough, in my opinion. So that's something that I will work on if I am elected to the Green Party of Canada Federal Council. There are some other informal wings. See these light colors where policy is discussed and created? There is an app called Slack that I do not go on that right now the party seems to be trying to formalize, which I personally feel is inappropriate. And I might get into that in a different video. There are ad hoc Facebook groups that are not official parts of the Green Party of Canada where discussions are happening. And I am sure that there are Twitter and other Facebook groups. I don't know, maybe there's something going on Instagram. So there is discussion going on around how we generate policy and what our policies should be. There's also a website called greensconnect.ca, which I think is in the process of becoming a formalized part of the Green Party of Canada. You also have some chat groups. One that I'm aware of is Google Group EDA 2.0, which is just a listserv, a Google group where the EDAs get together and talk about stuff. And I think that that's great because the EDAs in a grassroots organization need to have a lot of power and clout. And sometimes you will see policies coming from those discussions. Then I'm sure that there are probably discussion groups among the past leadership candidates, and they probably some of the 90 proposals that are in front of us with the August 21st convention probably came from them. So that's our political wing. This is my concept of the executive branch of the Green Party of Canada, and it mostly focuses around federal council and its committees. And unfortunately, only about 3 of these committees are listed on our party website. And the big problem for me is that there is this body called the Executive Council, and that's why I have these big red arrows that go from the leader to Executive Council, because for me that is an indication of hierarchical control. The other committees all have some transparency around them, but unfortunately the Executive Council has zero transparency. You can't see their agenda, you can't observe the meetings, you can't see the minutes from those meetings, and there's a real gray zone. There's a lot of real questions around how decisions are being made between executive council and federal council, and even who is sitting on executive council, and how often they meet and how they go about making decisions. It's a real gray zone. I think that executive council decisions are supposed to come to federal council for approval, but I'm pretty sure it is not happening that way. There is a motion in front of us with the convention on August 21st put forward by Kate Story, who is currently on federal council, to do away with executive council, and that's a pretty bold move. And I think we need to consider it. If we can't bring some transparency to executive council, then I don't think it belongs in the Green Party of Canada. So there is the fund, which is a separate unit. It is governed by the Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, and the fund has to do with money, anything that has to do with money. So contracting lawyers, or how to pay for media, how to hold the building, anything that has to do with contracts with staff, go through the fund. So the fund rep sits on federal council and the fund board of directors. So whoever is fund rep, it's a double job, and it's their job to make sure that there is good communication happening on who does what between federal council and the fund. And then there is an executive director who is just one human being, but they have a lot of power and say on how the party operates, and that's why it's such a big circle with so many of those red lines going through it. And then you have the staff, which in my opinion there's a lot of confusion. I'm not the only person saying this. I love the staff, but I feel like over time they have slowly been just given too much power and control over how the party operates. So that's why there's so many red arrows coming out of staff, is that we need to really clarify what their role is within the Green Party of Canada. And then there are some slightly informal groups that are definitely not official wings of the party. There is a constitutional working group that I have been, it's just an ad hoc group of grassroots Greens. I've been a member of that since September of 2020 when it first started. And we just really took a deep dive into the Constitution and talking about the Constitution, and some of the proposals that you'll see in front of you for the August 21st convention came from this constitutional working group. And it was a real pleasure to act in a grassroots way with that group. And we did use some Sociocracy 3.0 methods in running those meetings. And I'm sure that there are other groups. There are a lot of constitutional and bylaw amendments in front of us. And I'm sure that there are other groups and ad hoc groups that worked on that. So there is, last but definitely not least, most importantly, there is our judicial branch. The formal is the Ombuds and Appeals Committee. I'm not sure how officers are chosen for the Ombuds and Appeals Committee. They do have a report that just came out on the Jenica Atwin, Annamie Paul, Noah Zatzman heartbreak, and I think it's required reading for most Greens. I'm going to make another video on that in the near future. The Ombuds and Appeals Committee has not always been really functional. So during the Pratik Awasthi issue, um, I the Ombudsman Appeals Committee wasn't really dealing with that appropriately, or to my knowledge at all. And so an ad hoc group of grassroots Greens got together and called themselves Members for Growth and Renewal. And they had already done an earlier report on our 2019 election that is a really great read. And they did a report on Pratik Awasthi. So these are really informal and they're done with love, but they are pretty critical of how we behaved around those issues and provide some suggestions on how we can do better. And then there is a motion in front of us to create an ethics commissioner that I think we really need to look at, because our judicial branch really does need to be strengthened, in my opinion. Then we have the Canadian media, which I believe is, the court of public opinion, and it's not an official wing of the Green Party of Canada, but it does affect how we feel about each other and about ourselves. And there is a lot of informal discussion, right? And then you also have just sort of, an ad hoc group of grassroots Greens that I'm on, where it's just, we just talk about ethical issues in that group, the GPC Governance, Values, and Culture group. And then something that everybody can join, and I really hope you do, is if you go to greensconnect.ca and you sign in as a member, or you just sign in, anybody can sign in right now, then you will see the Green Listening Circle, and they are really doing amazing work on equity, diversity, and inclusion for our party. And I've really gotten a lot of the first two meetings. I think they meet one Sunday of every month. So last but not least, again, is the EDA cluster. And in any really, really healthy EDA, I feel that you've got all three branches within a functioning EDA. You'll have your executive and your legislative, and hopefully, a judicial setup for dealing with any breaches of ethics in your EDA. And in my opinion, the EDAs need to be really re-empowered in the Green Party of Canada, because that's where the magic happens. And that's where, Greens around the world, we are also, we hope for radical change, and we're in special interest groups trying to bring in radical change, and through the Green parties around the world, we legitimize those those activities that revolutionaries are doing around the world. We need to save this planet. And so that's why I believe so deeply in the Green Party of Canada, is because that's what happens with a healthy functioning EDA. And then also this there's something really exciting going on in the grassroots of our party, and the EDAs are really starting to organize, and you can see a little bit of that again on greensconnect.ca. And it's happening in the background, and it's really powerful, and it really excites me. It's so long overdue, and it's the hope for our party's survival, is that our EDAs can connect with each other and organize and save our party with what's going on with it right now. So I really want to legitimize those activities that the EDAs are doing on their own. Thanks so much for listening, and I am open to comments.